Welcome to Inspirational Journeys, everyone. My name is Ann Harrison, and today I want to welcome my special guest, Stephen Murray. Welcome to the show, Stephen.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to be on your show, and I thank your listeners for tuning in.
Thank you for reaching out to me on Podmatch as well, or
Yes.
through Podmatch. Okay, so before we dive into the questions, I would like for you to introduce yourself because nobody can tell your story better than you can.
Okay. Sure. I was born in England, as your listeners can probably tell from my accent. I wasn't born here in America. I was born in England, and as a young child, our family moved to Africa, different countries throughout the southern part of Africa. We moved there when I was 7 years old. I grew up there, had my formative years there. When I finished school, high school, and graduated, I went back to live in England. I traveled throughout Europe while I was in England. And then I received the offer of a job in Los Angeles, in California. I cast caution to the wind and I came to America, settled in Los Angeles, spent 27 years there. And then I moved to Las Vegas 18 years ago. And I've been a very happy resident of Las Vegas. I own a computer software business, or I'm a partner in one, I should say. Been partner for 39 years in the business. And now, as I'm approaching retirement, I discovered a joy of writing and have 4 self-published novels. So that's the long and the short of it.
Wow, that's amazing. You've traveled a lot. Um,
Yes, and even after traveling throughout Europe while I lived in England, since I've been in America, the business has thrived and has allowed me the opportunity to travel to every continent in the world and over 40 countries now. So it's been
wow.
a fun journey.
So, what inspired you to become a writer?
Um, Interesting question. And it's the strange thing was, I've written fiction. When I first started to write, I decided I wanted to write a book on my travels throughout the world. It was intended to be a biography, and I wanted to sort of share the experiences I'd had, the people I'd met, the different cultures and customs that I'd come across. I thought it would be interesting. And I spent a couple of years writing it, and I discovered a real joy of writing. And when I took the biography to be published, I was informed that I really needed to write women's fiction. That's what people are buying, that's what they're reading. And because I discovered a joy, I thought, well, I'm going to have a stab at writing women's fiction. And that's what I did. And I didn't realize that it was going to take me on such a journey with 4 published books and a 5th one coming out later this month, hopefully.
Oh, wow. That is amazing.
Yes.
And is it hard to write women's fiction?
Oh, and absolutely it is. Certainly for me, it is. I mean, you're talking to a lifelong bachelor here, and so, um,
The
and
research.
my first book is about a fictional Las Vegas wedding chapel in Las Vegas. I mean, in Las Vegas, we are the marriage capital of the world. And I stumbled across the idea about writing for this, writing a book about the couples that come to Las Vegas and why they fall in love and why they decide to get married in Las Vegas. And absolutely, it certainly was a challenge for me, no question about it. It's men and women do think differently, and they just do. It's a fact of life. And
And each individual person thinks differently too than others.
absolutely, you're dead right on that one.
So, how much research had to go into something like that?
Actually, no, I have to tell you, in none of my books do I do any research. It's all imagination, total imagination. For the first book, the Chapel book, I never interviewed any couples that had been to got married in a wedding chapel. I didn't interview any of the owners of a wedding chapel. I just wanted to make it total fiction. I have to say, I was helped by 4 women. I joined a writer's critique group, and it landed up with 4 women and myself. And the 4 women, they were just excellent in their advice, their help and suggestions, and they sort of kept me steered in the right direction when I started to wander off on a different tangent. So they were very helpful in putting the book together and what women are interested in.
Okay. So you had a little help along the way.
Yes,
That's a
I did.
that's a big thing. So, with your mysteries, what was the inspiration behind the cozy mystery and the crime fiction? I've read the crime fiction, and I'm actually about to start chapter 9 of the cozy mystery. So,
Oh, okay. Um, what inspired the crime fiction, and just so that your listeners are aware of the story, it's about 3 ladies who they're very elegant, charming, sophisticated, smart ladies that work for the most exclusive escort agency in Las Vegas. I did no research on this book. I have to tell you up front, that too is pure imagination. And the guy that runs it, he's really a crumb. He treats them like dirt. And so they come up with the perfect crime to get rid of him. And is it the perfect crime, or do they overlook one tiny little detail and the whole plot comes crashing down? So the inspiration for that came, believe it or not, from The Chapel of Eternal Love, my first book. One of the chapters is about a lady that runs an escort agency, and she makes the mistake of falling in love with one of her clients. And she puts her life on hold while he watches his children go through college and so on and so forth. He finally divorces his wife so they can get married, and he leaves her standing at the altar. And I got so many letters from women and emails wanting to know what happened to her. They felt so sorry for her that she was stood up. And I was surprised at the sympathy that she evoked. And I thought, well, let me extrapolate on that and take it a little bit further and take 3 female escorts and they actually kill somebody. Are those 3 escorts still going to evoke the same amount of sympathy from the female readers? By virtue of the fact they murdered somebody. So that's the inspiration for the crime fiction. And the inspiration for the murder mystery, the cozy murder mystery aboard the Queen Elizabeth II. As I was writing my biography, my business partner suggested we have a dinner party for our clients, but instead of just being a regular one, we would have one of those little murder mystery dinner kind of things. So that's what we did. And I made the story about a wealthy Beverly Hills couple celebrating their silver wedding anniversary, and they invite their family and friends, and one of them gets killed. And when time went by and I decided to write a murder mystery, I thought I'd like to take that story and just expand upon it. And I traveled on the Queen Elizabeth II. So I just took the storyline, and it's the same couple, the same family members, and just said instead of celebrating it in their Beverly Hills mansion, they celebrated it aboard the Queen Elizabeth II. As the boat comes back from England to New York, one of the party gets killed. So that's what inspired that book.
I'm interested. I mean, I'm curious too. Are you an avid reader?
No, I enjoy reading. I don't seem to find the time for it as much as I'd like. And I'm not a great fiction reader. I like to read biographies. I like to read books on current affairs when I have the time. Um, but I've grown to appreciate fiction a little bit more, I suppose. And now I've met a lot of local authors in Las Vegas, so I find myself reading their books when I have time and I find time. But typically, no, I'm not a reader, a huge reader.
And for those of you listening, I want to give all of you, the suggestion here. One of the things my friend and author coach told me, she suggested that when I in the genre that I'm writing in, she suggested reading in that genre to study, to use other authors' work as models to study how they do their work, because it really helps you hone your craft. Like, say you want to write another mystery, if you were to read in the like the cozy mystery or thriller genre, that's my genre too. Um, Reading in that genre kind of gives you an idea of the tropes.
Yes, there's probably a lot to be said for that. Um, as it happens, the writers' critique group that I'm in, the four ladies, we're all writing in different genres. And I find that very interesting because I'm learning a lot from not only their styles, but their subjects and the thought process behind the subjects in which they're writing. And I find I've learned a lot from that.
Oh,
I dare
cool.
say if I was in a group of murder mystery writers and crime fiction writers, I'd probably learn equally as much from them. I just wonder if I might be tempted to sort of steal some of their ideas. I don't know.
No, no, because honestly, I read a lot of crime fiction, but
Hmm.
I know what I kind of get an idea of what readers expect and kind of
Uh-huh.
get an idea of the tropes. And sometimes it inspires me to write my own story. I mean, I mean, you don't steal somebody's idea, but you can mimic use them as role models for your work. That's what
This
I do.
is true.
That's what I do.
That's very true. Um, I think I'm writing more for the fun of it, the enjoyment. I get a lot of fun out of it. I get a lot of fun out of marketing the books. And I have, they say that the rule of thumb is that you should write about what you know. And of course, on all four of my novels, I've written about what I don't know, which is defying all the odds. Um, and all books have to be a challenge for me. And the murder mystery, I wanted to try something different. And if you've read a lot of murder mysteries, I don't know how many books you found along the lines of the one that I've written that you're currently reading. But it seems to me that in most murder mystery books, the actual murder takes place like within the first two or three chapters.
Hmm.
And then you spend the rest of the book figuring out who done it. Um, I want to try something different. I wanted to introduce the entire cast of characters before the murder took place. And they all have reasons really for killing each other off. So I like to think of my murder mystery as a twofer. You get two for the price of one in a way, because the first half, you're figuring out which one of this crew is going to get murdered. And then once you found out who the victim is, then the second part is, okay, now we know who got killed, who done it, and why. So I wanted to try something different and see if it would work. And fortunately, for the main part, for most people, it seemed to have worked. They seem to have liked the idea of
Oh, okay.
trying to figure out. So,
Experimentation. I like that.
yes.
I like that. I mean, it's
Yes.
and it's good so far. I mean, honestly, I'm intrigued
Good.
with all the the facets of the story. I'm really intrigued. I'm kind of looking, just studying it. I mean, reading it for pleasure, but studying it too to see your style here. So, tell me about your process. Do you plot your stories? Do you, as we Rimo participants say, do you pants your stories, or do you um plants them? What I mean by that is a little plotting, a little pantsing.
Mine's a mixture. I come up with a story in my mind. I see how I want it to finish. I know the ending, but I then try and come up with a roadmap for the books. But it's been my experience, and I don't know what it's like with you as an author, but I found as I start getting into it, the book suddenly starts taking detours that I never imagined. And a lot of that I find is specifically in the dialogue, as the characters become more and more real in my mind as they're being developed. I find
Mhm.
what I had planned on them saying in the dialogue and the narrative part um, changes, because their voice somehow seems to sort of take over in my
Yep.
mind.
Yep.
It sounds silly, but
No,
it
it's
happens. And
for
when I say to people, I'm hearing these voices in my mind, everybody laughs because they think
n-
you're stupid. But when I'm typing the dialogue, I almost hear a voice that says, I would never say it like that. And I find myself hitting the backspace key and going and retyping it in the voice that I'm hearing. And that happens not only with the dialogue, but with the plot lines. I find that the characters are almost telling me, well, let's do a little detour and take the book here and take the book there. So yes, it's a long-winded answer to your question, but it's both. I do have an outline, but it's not rigid and totally structured, that it doesn't take a few little detours along the way.
exactly. I mean, if you become a part of a writing community, um, you'll notice that a lot of us people may think we're weird, but I'm gonna tell you honestly, writers are a weird bunch because we do things that the people that are not writers would think are crazy. But you know what? Weird is good. Weird is I told some writing friends of mine, weird is a far cry from crazy. So I'll admit that I'm a little weird. And yes, my characters do talk to me.
Yeah, I think
So
they talk to us all, but I think that one of the joys about writing, and certainly in character development, is I think you learn a lot about human psychology and thought processes and things like that. I think we tend to get a little bit more deeper than the average person, only because we have to dig deep inside ourselves to develop the characters. You know,
mhm.
if we want one of the characters to be jealous, we've got to dig deep inside to try and feel that jealousy. And if it's not a character that's in our own nature, it makes it very hard.
And you kind of have to observe the world around you, and you may have to do a little research to find out who that character really is, because that character will tell you. I've
Yes.
done character profiles just on my own in the book that I'm working on. I've done some character profiles and found out some things that I was not expecting, and the
Yeah.
characters never cease to surprise me. I don't know about you, but that's the way it works with me.
They do. You're absolutely right. And in the first book, the Chapel of Eternal Love, because the reader essentially spends a day at a wedding chapel and you meet all these couples as they come and go. There are a lot of characters in the book, and each chapter is a different wedding story. They're linked together into a novel, but it was an experiment, really, and finding out why these people fell in love, because it's not a one size fits all emotion. You know, people fall in love for different reasons. And so I had to develop all these different characters in the book. And it was really, really hard. It was very, very hard and a huge challenge, but it was fun. And it was interesting.
Right, and that's what my friend and author coach Jen Lowry from the Jen Lowry Writes podcast. Yes, Jen, I'm giving you a shout out here. She's always told me, and told other friends in our group, know your why.
Yes. Yes.
If you
Very
know
good.
your why, and your
Yeah.
characters know their why, then you've got a good starting point.
Yes. But
I know
that's
I'm supposed to ask you for tips, but I'm throwing them out too.
no. Well, the nice thing is, and when we linked up through Podmatch, you mentioned that in there, and I thought, and I even put it in my newsletter that this is going to be great because Anne's going to share some of her writing tips and hopefully some of her poetry.
Oh yeah, well I do have. I mean, wow. Um, but before I get into that, if you want me to share a poem, I will. But before I get into that, I have a question. What writing advice do you have for the listeners?
Well, a couple of things. One, I would strongly urge anybody, no matter what they're writing, to find a critique group and join it, because they will see things in your writing that you don't see. What appears obvious to us when we're putting it down on paper may not necessarily be apparent to the reader. So I would say get involved in a critique group as soon as you can, because you may get so far into a story and then you find there's a huge chunk of logic missing out from the beginning of the book that you've got to go back and do massive rewrites. And if you're in a critique group, and they're a solid critique group that meets regularly like ours does, we've met for 9 years, they will help you and they will point out deficiencies, and you will grow enormously from being part of a critique group, whether it's in the same genre, like you suggested, or whether they all write in different genres. The important thing is you are getting different perspectives. The other thing I would say is be sure when your work is finished to get it professionally edited. Never say, oh, my wife's an English teacher, she'll edit it, or I've got a friend who teaches English, or I've got a friend who's an author. They are not necessarily capable or qualified to be an editor. Because your wife taught English doesn't make her an editor any more than an editor would necessarily make a good English teacher. It's important to get somebody who's totally objective to your book. They haven't read anything about it. They haven't heard anything about it over the months or the years that you've been writing about it. Somebody who's totally objective. That is so, so important. And don't think that your work's not good enough. Everybody has a story to tell, whether it's fictional, whether it's real. Go for it, make it happen. Whether you go self-publishing or traditional publishing, make it happen, believe in your work, and follow your dream.
So tell me, you said you got a book coming out in the next month or so. What are you working on now?
Well, the book that's coming out, believe it or not, is totally different. I've written mainstream, I've written cozy murder mystery and crime fiction. The book that's coming out later this month, and it should have been out already, but it isn't. It's one of these very warm, mushy Christmas stories. When Discreetly Yours, the crime fiction, came out in July of 2019, I'd been wallowing for 2 years in that book and dealing with escorts and murders and crime and drugs and what have you. I was laying in bed one night and I just happened to switch on Hallmark TV, and they were having their Christmas movies in July, and it was so refreshing to watch something light and frothy. And I thought, that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to write a very light and warm, frothy, warm and fuzzy Christmas book. And that's exactly what I've written. It's a relatively short book by comparison, but it was fun to write, and I'm hoping that it will be warm and fuzzy to the readers when it comes out.
I'm looking forward to that one, because I love those Hallmark type Christmas books. The stories, yeah, I do. I really do.
Well, this one's it's not the romantic one. That the Hallmark seem to follow a tried and true theme, and yet we all still seem to watch them. And, it's normally somebody with a high profile job in a big city, and they've got to go to this little small hometown, and they fall in love with their childhood sweetheart, and they all end in the kiss kind of thing. This one's slightly different. It's 5 people traveling on a helicopter to a little town, and the helicopter crashes outside the small Christmas village where they practice Christmas all year long. And these 5 individuals, they've all got issues that they're having to deal with and face. And it's how the few days that they're stranded in this Christmas village, how it totally reshapes and alters their lives. It becomes a life-altering experience for each of them. So it's warm and fuzzy.
Oh, I've got
Feel
a
good.
book you might like. The 12 Days of Fruitcake.
Oh, as it happens, I love fruitcake too.
That
12
was
days
an
of
awesome
fruitcake.
book because the fruitcake gets passed around to 12 different people on 12 different days and it changes their lives.
Oh, how cool is that?
I saw that it was in a newsletter that I used to, that was, um, that I would get, although I haven't seen the newsletter in a while, but I got that on Kindle and it was free, I think, at the time, and it was amazing. So yeah, I think you don't have to read that. You could read it in one sitting, or you could read it, chapter by chapter or day by day, whatever you call it. But still, it's amazing.
I've written that down, and as we've been talking here, so that I don't forget the title. And yes, I will definitely do a Google search and see
It's
if
on
they've got it in our
Amazon.
local Barnes and Noble.
Oh, okay.
But
Because if you can
thanks
find
for
it there,
that
it's on
tip.
Amazon. Yeah, that was a really good. I love stories like that. I mean, honestly. So, where can people find you online?
I have an author website, Anne. It's www.authorstephen, Stephen, Murray, Murray, www.authorstephen.com. That's it.
Okay, yeah.
Authorstephenmurray.com. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Gosh, had a mental block there. And it will tell you about myself as an author, and it lists all of the books. And each of the books, if you click on the covers, they've all got their own website that shows the reviews of the book, gives you synopses of the books, upcoming events. Yours has been out there that I'm going to be a guest on your pod match, and when it actually comes out, I will go and update it with the link so people
Yeah, I
can
will send you those links. Don't worry. I will
know.
definitely send you
And
those links so that.
yes, and it'll also be posted on Facebook, and then also my next month's newsletter. I send out a monthly newsletter as well.
Oh, nice. So you do have a Facebook page?
Yes, Stephen Murray.
Okay. Do you have a Twitter or anything like that, or is it just
No,
Facebook?
no, I just Facebook. I
Oh,
don't know
okay.
how you find it, Anne, but with I have the 4 websites, and now I'm going to have 5 with the Christmas book, plus Facebook, plus my monthly newsletter.
Wow, you you
It's
you
a
stay
lot of
busy.
it's it's a lot keeping busy, and
Yeah.
I do a fair amount of book signings locally, and uh, book talks and presentations and things like that throughout the Las Vegas Valley, and I still have my job. So,
Wow. Yeah.
but
You.
it's fortunate it's not full time because I'm approaching retirement, so I'm winding the business down, which is good.
Yeah, but I know there are writers that have full-time jobs too. So, oh yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Yes. I don't know how they find the time with a full-time job and to write and to market, and
Pockets of
especially if they're
time.
doing their own
Pockets of
maintenance.
time.
I'm sorry?
Pockets of time. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
Not
yep,
at all. No
pockets of
pockets of
time.
time. No, you're right. Suppose it's all how we prioritize our time, isn't it? That's what it
Mm-hmm.
comes down to. We'll have the same number of hours in the day.
Well, do you have any parting words before we close out the show?
I'd just like to say that well, one, it's been an absolute pleasure being on your show, Anne. I've enjoyed my conversation with you. I've enjoyed your writing tips. I certainly appreciate the reference to 12 Days of Fruitcake. And the only thing I would say to your listeners and their authors, that if they're working on their books, just go ahead and make sure they happen and fulfill it. And I just think once you get the book published, it's certainly been my experience, it'll take you on a journey that you never ever imagined. Uh, for my journey, I couldn't have imagined it. I've met a lot of wonderful people. It's been amazing. And just believe in your work and go out and make it happen.
Well, thank you so much. That it's been a pleasure talking to you too. So, we challenge you today to go out there and read to get inspired. write something inspiring, and share your creation with the world. For when you've touched one life, you've touched thousands. Thanks for joining us on Inspirational Journeys, and have a blessed day. And remember, your story matters.